A mantra means that which frees the mind. Man means mind, tra means to free. So mantra means to free the mind, and by chanting God's name we free the mind. So the message again is chant, chant and chant. Thank you. Can we have the lights on, please? Form you can get spiritual benefit. So in fact in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is asked by Arjuna. Arjuna asked Krishna that, "Oh Krishna, which is better? Is it better to worship you in your impersonal form, or is it better to worship you in your personal form? Who is considered to be superior?" He asked, "Evam satata yukta ye bhaktas tvam paryupasate ye chapya aksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vittama." That there are people who worship you in your personal form as Krishna, and there are people who worship you in your impersonal form. Which is better, which is higher, which is superior? This is the question that Krishna is asked by Arjuna. So what does Krishna answer Arjuna? He answers Arjuna very clearly. He says that those who worship me in my personal form, they are considered to be the highest of all. He says, "Mai aveshya manoye mam nitya yukta upasate shraddhaya paroyopetas te me yuktatno mata." That one who worships me in the form of Krishna, he is considered to be the highest of all. Of course, he mentions in the next verse that even those who worship me in the impersonal form, they are following a valid path, no doubt. But although they are following a valid path, he clarifies later that klesho diktaras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavat biravapyate. That if you are worshipping me in my impersonal form, if you are attached to the worship of me in my impersonal form, you will find it very difficult and you will find it very painful to make progress in this discipline, because you yourself are embodied. Since you yourself are embodied, to make progress in the worship of the impersonal absolute is very, very difficult. This is what Lord Krishna says. Now when we accept that we should worship God in His form, then we should know what is the form of God. Because this is the unfortunate fact that in India today, very few people are aware what is God's form. Therefore, we have a lot of confusion, where people accept the demigods as Lord Krishna. They say it doesn't matter what form you worship any form, it's the same thing. This is what people are saying. That it doesn't matter what form you are worshipping, whether you worship Durga, or whether you worship Shiva, or whether you worship Ram or Krishna, it's all one and the same. But that's not what the Bhagavad Gita says. The Bhagavad Gita is very, very clear on this issue. Please read the 7th and the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In the 7th and 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very clearly tells you the difference between worshipping him and worshipping the demigods. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "Kamaiste ritajnana prapadyante nyadevata tam tam niyamam astaya prakriti niyata swaya." He says those whose hearts are distorted by material desire, they worship the different demigods according to their own rules and regulations of worship. And he says, "Yo yo yam yam tanum bhakta shraddhayarcham ichhati tasya tasya chalam shraddham tam eva vidhamya aham." He says it doesn't matter what form you fix your mind on. When you fix your mind on that form, I who am seated in your heart, I actually make that faith steady. So if you are wondering why you have faith in some other demigod, Krishna is revealing to you that he himself is making your faith steady on the demigod. And further he says, "Sataya shraddhaya yuktas tasya aradhanam ichhati." That lavate cha tatha kaman Mayeva Vihitan Hitan. And by worshipping those demigods, what favors you get? Those favors are given by me alone. That means when you worship the demigods for some material benefit, actually what happens is God who is seated in your heart, He understands your desire and He sees that you obtain your desire through the demigods. But He says in the very next verse that those who worship the demigods are of small intelligence because the fruits that are obtained by them are limited and temporary. And because they are obtaining limited and temporary fruits, they are considered to be unintelligent. Actually, worship of God is supposed to be without any material motivation whatsoever. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually reveals the way. He says in his Shikshashtakam, he says, Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim kavitam va jagdisha kamaye, mama janmani janmanishware bhavitat bhaktir ahitukitvayi. He says, I don't want wealth. I don't want beautiful women. I don't want any number of followers either. And I don't even want liberation from the cycle of birth and death. I don't mind being born again and again, provided I am always remembering and serving you. This is actually the devotion that is required from all of us. We should not ask God for wealth. We should not ask Him for beautiful women or beautiful men. We should not ask Him for any number of followers. We should not even ask Him for liberation from the cycle of birth and death. We should simply ask Him that it doesn't matter how many times we are reborn, we should always try to remember Him and serve Him throughout our lifetime. This is all that we should ask for. He also says in the Shikshashtakam that Ashlishya va pad ratam pinastu mam adarshanam mam hatam karotu va yatha tatha va vidadatu lampato mat prananathastu sa eva napara. He says, oh God, you shall always be my worshipful Lord, even if you treat me roughly in your embrace. It doesn't mean that because you have been worshipping God with great love and devotion, God should treat you very kindly. He may treat you roughly in His embrace. He says, you can be my Lord and treat me roughly in your embrace. He says, you can make me broken-hearted by not being present before me. You might think that I am worshipping God so sincerely, why can't I see God? But He says, it doesn't matter, even if I can't see you, I don't mind. He says, you shall always be my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Without any condition I shall serve you. This is the devotion that is required to understand God. That means without any condition, even if you are treated roughly, even if you are broken-hearted by His absence, without asking for wealth, beautiful women, without asking for followers, without asking for the liberation of birth and death, this is how we have to worship God. But because people cannot achieve that standard, they worship the demigods. They feel that by doing this sacrifice, they will get this in return. If they do this, then God will give them that in return. So they are trying to actually negotiate with God as if God is their order supplier, like God is their baniya. That, dear God, I'll do this for you, you do that for me. And even popular songs are based on this. I remember one famous song which went like this. That, oh God, will you buy me a Mercedes Benz? My friends all drive Porsches, I must make amends. So you are asking God for a Mercedes Benz, you are asking God for wonderful things. But instead of asking God for things, we should actually ask God that, oh God, I don't want anything from you, just help me to remember you and serve you at all times. That is the meaning of love of God. Therefore, when you worship other gods, when you worship demigods, what happens? Krishna says in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Yepi anya devata bhakta, yajante shraddhayanvita, tepi mam eva kaunteya, yajanti avidhi purvakam. That if you are worshipping other gods, even if you are worshipping full of faith, what is happening is that you are worshipping without proper understanding. That is actually meant for me and me alone. He says in the next verse, Ahami sarva yagna nam bhokta cha prabhureva cha na tu mam abhijananti tatvena tasyavanti te. That unless you understand that I am the original source of all the demigods, and I am the source from which they all come, and unless you understand I am the recipient of all sacrifices, you will fall down from your position of spiritual realization. So you have to understand that Krishna is the source of all, and to achieve Krishna you must worship Him without any material desire whatsoever. Only that is the best way you can achieve love of God, and that is the best way you can get to see Him and achieve a relationship with Him or communion with Him. And it doesn't mean that if you worship the demigods, you will get the same result as worshipping Lord Krishna. It's not possible. If you buy a ticket to Tokyo, you can't land up in London. If you want to go to London, you require a ticket to London. If you buy a ticket to Tokyo, you go to Tokyo. This is what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. He says in the Bhagavad Gita that yanti deva vrata devan, pitran yanti pitravrata, bhutani yanti bhuteja, yanti mad yajno api mam. He says those who worship the demigods, they go to the demigods. Those who worship their ancestors, they go to their ancestors. Those who worship the ghosts, they go to the planet of the ghosts. But those who worship me, they come to me. And he says that all these places that you go to are not the same. He says, Abrahma bhuvan loka punaravartino Arjuna. That all the other places that you go to, you have to come back punaravartino. But mam upetya tu kaunteya punarjanmana vidyate. But if you come to me from there, there is no return into this material world. So, if you are worshipping other demigods, then what will happen is that you may go to the planet of the demigods, but it is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita that tetam bhuktva swarga lokam vishalam shine punya martilokam vishanti. That you may go to their planets after you've enjoyed your heavenly delights, you've exhausted your pious activities, you have to come back. Shine punya martilokam vishanti. You come back into this material world. But one who reaches the planet of Lord Krishna, one who reaches the kingdom of Lord Krishna, he does not have to come back again into this material world. This is clearly, specifically mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, Krishna mentions in the second verse of the 10th chapter, he says, Name vidu suragana, prabhavam na maharishiya, aham adiri devanam maharishiya cha sarvasha. He says, even the great demigods cannot understand me, even the great Maharishis cannot understand me, because I am in fact the source of the Maharishis, I am in fact the source of the demigods. So this is what Krishna is saying, that all the demigods spring from him. And by worshipping Krishna, you are not actually detracting or taking anything away from the demigods. Sometimes people come to me after the lecture and they say that, oh, all my life I have been worshipping so and so demigod, and now you are telling me I should change. But what will happen? If I do that, I'll be upsetting this demigod. He will probably take it out on me. He'll punish me for deserting him. So this is the idea some people have. But actually it is to be understood that Krishna is a root and the demigods are the leaves, the flowers and the branches. And when you water the root, automatically the leaves, the flowers and branches are all satisfied. It says in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Yatha taror mula nischanena triptayanti skanjo bhujo pashaka prano paraj yathendriyam sarva aranam achutejya. That just like when you water the root of the plant, the leaves, the flowers, the branches all get satisfied, so also when you put food in your stomach, all your limbs get nourishment. So also when you worship Lord Krishna, all the demigods automatically they get satisfied. This is what is mentioned in all the scriptures. In fact, the story of lifting Govardhan Parvat is simply to illustrate this. Because Krishna's father, Nand Maharaj, was to worship Lord Indra. So when he was to worship Lord Indra, Krishna tells him, don't worship Lord Indra, worship me in the form of Govardhan Parvat. So Nand Maharaj says, no, let's take it easy. I'll worship Govardhan Parvat, but I'll also worship Indra. Therefore, I'll keep both happy. Therefore, some people have the idea, yeah, now I've understood Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. So let me worship whoever I've been worshipping before and Krishna together. So I'll hedge my bets. So whichever way it turns out, I'll still be the winner. So Krishna's father also wanted to do that. He said, okay, it's cool. Relax, Krishna. I'll worship Govardhan also and I'll worship you in the form of Govardhan and I'll worship Indra also, no problem. I'll worship them both. So Krishna tells him, don't do that. You don't have enough time. You have enough time only to perform one sacrifice. You please worship Govardhan Parvat only. So that is what his father does. That is what all the cowherds do. Cowherd boys and cowherd girls do. And what happens? Indra, who is so upset, he gets a Samvarta cloud to inundate the whole of that area with floods. So they all come running to Krishna saying that, oh Krishna, now look what's happened now. Indra is trying to drown us out. So to show them that he is the ultimate protector, he lifts up Govardhan Parvat and protects them. In fact, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that Kaunteya pratijanahi name bhaktya pranashyati. That, O son of Kunti, declare it boldly, no devotee of mine shall ever perish. So to show them that even if the demigod gets upset with you, which will never happen because all demigods are devotees of Lord Krishna. But even suppose you imagine that this will happen, Krishna will protect you. This is actually the example to illustrate this is the story of the lifting of Govardhan Parvat. This is why Lord Krishna lifts up Govardhan Parvat. So the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita is that if you want to worship God, you can worship Him in His impersonal manifestation, that's fine. But that's a painful and difficult path. But if you want to worship God in the personal manifestation, which is simpler, easier, higher, better, then you must worship Him in the form of Krishna or as Vishnu or any of His other incarnations or Vishnu incarnations. You may worship Him in any of these forms. That is, for example, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 24 incarnations of Vishnu mentioned. So you can worship any one of these 24 incarnations. These are incarnations of God. The rest are demigods. So by worshipping demigods, you get limited temporary benefit. In fact, I have a friend, and this friend of mine is a great devotee of Lord Shiva. So he says, don't tell me to worship anybody else because Shiva has looked after me very nicely up till now. So I said, what do you mean by that? He said, look at me, I've got a wonderful house, I've got a wonderful Mercedes-Benz car, and I've got a great business that's going great guns, and I'm doing wonderfully, and all by worshipping Lord Shiva, and Shiva is supposed to be Ashutosh, he's one who is easily pleased. So he's easily pleased, and therefore I am worshipping him and he's satisfying me. And he says, look at other people who claim to be worshippers of Lord Krishna. They aren't doing half as well as I am doing. He says, look at you. You're wasting so much time worshipping Lord Krishna. You aren't doing anything near like what I am doing. So why don't you worship Lord Shiva? So I tried to explain to him that in the Srimad Bhagavatam it has been declared that all people are divided into two groups. Those who worship Vishnu and his incarnations or Krishna and his incarnations are known as Devas. And those who worship God in the form of the demigods are known as Asuras. So if you worship Krishna or Vishnu as incarnations, you are a Deva. If you worship the demigods, you are known as an Asura. So he says, very nice. So you are a Deva and I have become Asura. So I said, look, I am not saying that. This is what Srimad Bhagavatam is saying. So he's saying, whoever is saying that, do you really expect me to digest it? So I said, look, who was the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva? So he scratched his head, he couldn't tell me. I said, the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva was none other than Ravan. Ravan was the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva. So Ravan performed so much sacrifice to satisfy Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva actually gave him boon after boon after boon, and Ravan had Lanka, which was a city of gold. But did Ravan become a better person? Did Ravan become a better person by worshipping Lord Shiva, although he got all those material benefits? In fact, he became a worse person. He in fact tried to kidnap Parvati and enjoy her without Lord Shiva. This is what Ravan's mentality was. And eventually he kidnapped Sita, and then Lord came and killed him. So I said, the greatest devotee of Lord Shiva is Ravan. He got all that he wanted, but he became a demon. And this is what happens, that when you worship the demigods, they may satisfy you, but what happens is you don't become a better person, you become a demon. Or you take the example of Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu worshipped Brahma. By worship of Brahma, he got so many boons. He became very powerful. He even conquered most of the demigods. But Hiranyakashipu became a great demon as a result of those boons. And as a result of those boons, he became such a great demon that eventually what happened was that the Lord had to incarnate as Narasimhadev and actually kill him. So yes, you may get your material benefits, but what will happen is, along with your material benefits, you won't get purified. You will actually, in fact, get more and more demonical qualities. This is why they are called as Asuras. But you might well ask me now, that fine, I heard, I was quite impressed that you have to worship God without any material desire whatsoever. And it seems to be a wonderful ideal that I should ask him not even for freedom from cycle of birth and death. It sounds great. But now what am I supposed to do? I've got a heart which is full of material desire. Material desire is pouring out of both my ears. And now you are telling me I should worship the Lord without material desire. What happens to me then? The answer is that even if you worship Lord Krishna with material desire, there is no harm. Why do I say there is no harm? Because Lord Krishna can also fulfill material desire. But when he fulfills your material desire, he simultaneously purifies you. This example is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam of Dhruv Maharaj. Dhruv Maharaj, he wanted a kingdom greater than his father's, because his stepmother pulled Dhruv from his father's lap and said that you are not going to be the next king, my son will be, you better get out from here. So Dhruv, he went to the forest, Guided by his mother, he wanted to worship the Supreme Lord and get the boon, a material boon of a great kingdom. But when he went to the forest, he met Narad Muni on the way. So Narad Muni told him that, you should accept all things in life peacefully. You should not have material desire in your heart. So what did Dhruv Maharaj say? Dhruv Maharaj said, please spare me these lectures. Give this lecture to somebody else. I am brimming with material desire. You just tell me one thing. Can Krishna fulfill my material desire, or he can't fulfill my material desire? So Narad Muni tells him, fine, yes, okay. You worship Krishna with material desire, no problem. So Dhruv Maharaj does just this. He worships the Lord full of material desire for a kingdom greater than his father's. And in the end, the Lord, being pleased with him, appears before him. So when he sees the Lord, what does he say? He is completely overwhelmed when he sees the Lord. And what does he say? He says, Sthan abhilashi tapaso sthito aham. He says, for desiring a material position, I worshipped you. For desiring a sthan. Sthan means a position of material prosperity, of ruling a kingdom. For that I worshipped you. Tapaso sthito aham. Tvam praptvan dev muni indra guyam. And you who are hidden to Indra and to the great munis, you have appeared before me. Kacham vichinvan api divya ratnam. Swamin kritharto asmi varam na yache. He says that I was looking for broken pieces of glass. And while looking for broken pieces of glass, I have now found a beautiful jewel. Now I don't want the broken piece of glass. That means I was worshipping you with material desire. But now that I have obtained you, I no longer want that material desire. I have obtained you, that is sufficient for me. I don't want anything more. This is the beauty of worshipping the Supreme Lord. That when you worship Him even with material desire, not only do you obtain your material desire, but simultaneously you get purified. You no longer have further material desire. It's like an itch. Actually, material desire is like an itch. You know what's an itch? Has anybody had any skin disease like eczema or an itch? There's a very severe itch, so you go and you keep on scratching. So when you scratch, what happens? You get wonderful, delicious pleasure. When you scratch, you feel good. Wonderful, terrific. This is how you feel when you satisfy your material desire. You feel really good, great. But what happens? After some time, the itch starts again. And this time the itch is stronger and stronger and stronger. And so you scratch even harder this time. And the relief that you get is even greater. Wonderful. This feels like it. So you get wonderfully satisfied. But the itch becomes worse and worse and worse. And finally, because of repeated scratching, you get ulceration, you get infection, and you get severe pain. This is the eventual result. So material desire is like that. It's not satisfied by scratching. Now if you go to your friend and you ask him, I've got a very severe itch on my back where I cannot scratch. My dear friend, will you scratch me? So your friend will probably scratch your back. But suppose you come to a skin specialist and you tell the skin specialist, Doc, here's this itch on my back, will you please scratch me? You think the skin specialist will scratch your back? He's not going to scratch your back. What will he do? He will take an ointment and rub that on your back. And as a result of rubbing that ointment on your back, that itch will go away permanently. Not only will your itch be satisfied, but you will get no further itch again. So that is the difference between the demigods and Lord Krishna. When you go to Lord Krishna with your material desire, what he does is that he satisfies that material desire, but he satisfies it in such a way that you have no further material desire. He is like the skin specialist who puts the ointment and takes away the itch permanently. But if you worship the demigods, what is the philosophy of the demigods? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That is the philosophy. So actually you become a bigger and bigger demon. Therefore it has been mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Akamo sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So whether you are without desire, whether you are full of desire, or whether you desire liberation, in all circumstances worship only the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So have you understood the message of today's lecture? Have I been fairly clear in what I have said?
Yes.
Are there any questions? Anybody wants to ask me something? Yes?
Krishna took his incarnation in India.
Pardon?
Krishna took birth in India, and all his reincarnations are also in India almost. So why there is no reincarnation in China, Russia, or other country?
So his question is that why Krishna has reincarnated only in India. Now first of all, the Vedic scriptures do not talk only of India. I mentioned that you didn't come yesterday, I believe. You must have missed the first day. So this is why I recommend that people should attend every day, because when you attend every day, then you know what I'm talking about. On the first day I mentioned very clearly that the Vedic scriptures talk about Bhugol, that is they talk about the whole earth. They also talk about Saptadvip. Saptadvip means what? The 7 continents. And you have many examples in the Vedic scriptures of people who are rulers of Bhugol, who are rulers of Saptadvip. And actually the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead take place not only over the whole earth, my dear friend, but they also take place all over the universe. So the activities of God are not confined to Bharat Bhumi. They are not even confined to the rest of the earth. He travels all over the universe, and his activities in the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you read it, will be found all over the universe, not only in the earth or not only in India. But it is true that we talk about him more in India. Why do we talk about him more in India? Because India is called Bhakti Bhumi. It is the land where devotion is strongly entrenched. Of course, if you go to the West, if you go to America, that is Bhog Bhumi. That means you go there to enjoy. But when you come to India, that is Bhakti Bhumi, because right from the poorest to the richest, everybody has got that intrinsic desire to develop devotion and love of God. Therefore, he is more discussed here. But in actual fact, his activities and pastimes take place not only over the globe, not only over the earth, but all over the universe. Any other questions? Let somebody else have a chance. Yes? Anybody has any other questions?
This afternoon I was just now.
Who is the equivalent of Indra and other Bigol, as you say? Who is the equivalent of Indra and other parts of Bigol, the soul of world?
I think this question is not in. For example, he is asking what is the role of Indra. Indra is not in Bhugol. Indra has got his own kingdom. That is the heavenly planets which are part of the material world. And material world means the heavenly planets are separate planets situated in the material world. They are not connected with the earth. The earth is one of the middle planets. Anybody else has got any questions connected with today's lecture about gods and demigods? Yes, is it about gods and demigods? Yes.
We all believe that Krishna is the incarnation of Vishnu. But you've shown some slide where you're showing that Krishna has taken the incarnation of himself.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
He is asking me that I always understood that Krishna was an incarnation of Vishnu, but you have shown in your slideshow that he is the source of Vishnu. So then why is he known as incarnation of Vishnu? It's very simple. For example, if you have an industrialist, suppose the industrialist has 100 factories all over India. And now he's got 100 factories all over India, and he goes maybe once in 5 years to visit a particular factory. So when he enters that particular factory, the workers will not recognize him. Do you agree with me? That when he enters that factory, the workers will not recognize him. So even the watchman will not let him into the factory, although he's the owner of that factory. So to prove his identity, he takes a gate pass from the manager of that factory. That means he is the owner of that factory, but to gain admittance over there, to be recognized by other people there, he has to actually take a gate pass from the manager of that factory. So also, Krishna is the source of the entire universe. But each separate universe, each solar system, each universe is actually managed by a separate Vishnu. There are different Vishnus in charge of different universes in the material hemisphere. And when he comes into this particular universe, he has to appear through Vishnu so that he may be recognized as God himself. So although he is the source of Vishnu, when he incarnates here, he comes through Vishnu who is in charge of this universe. Is it clear? This is not my own story. This is found in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I also gave you a Sanskrit verse to prove that. It is said, Ete chaunsa kala punsa krishnastu bhagwan swayam indrari vyakulam loke mridayante yoge yoge. That actually of all the forms of God, Krishna is the original form from which all other forms come. This is what is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam begins like this. It says, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It calls upon Vasudevaya, that is the son of Vasudev, Krishna. And he says, Janmadi asyato anvayat itaras charthesva abhignya swarat. He is talking about God who has been existing, Vasudev, son of Krishna, son of Vasudev, who has been existing before everybody else. So now we'll have a break for Prashadam. I think he wants to make an announcement, so we can have that in. Questions for the audience? Anybody else has any questions? Yes? One more question.
I agree that you said Krishna is a super god. But when he is a super god, what was the need of other god and other demigods? He could have eradicated them. No? But now there is a confusion of where, whom to pray and what to do.
So his question is a very valid question. He says that if Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, what was the need to create the demigods? Because by creating the demigods, now he has created a lot of confusion in my mind because I don't know whom to worship. So it has actually been said that where is there disturbance? There is disturbance where there is ignorance. When ignorance is removed, then there is no more disturbance. So Krishna has created the demigods for fulfilling a specific purpose. And that specific purpose is fulfilling the material necessities of those people who want to continue to remain here. So if you don't want to be delivered from the cycle of birth and death, if you want to continue remaining on this earth, then you please worship the demigods. You will nourish the demigods will nourish you in turn, and in this way both of you shall be happy. This is mentioned in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. In the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga, he talks that in the beginning of creation, I created demigods, sacrifice and human beings, saying that by the performance of sacrifice you shall nourish the demigods, and the demigods by the production of rain shall nourish you, and in this way you shall nourish each other and remain happily here. So those people who want to remain permanently over here, they can worship the demigods and they will be happy and satisfied here. I'll give you an example little later on when you attend the lecture on karma. In the lecture on karma, I will show you that this material world is a prison house. And in the prison house, there's a warden who looks after the people in the prison. The demigods are the wardens of the prison house. So you want to remain in the prison, fine, suck up to the warden. But if you want to get out of the prison, you have to petition the governor. The warden can't let you out. But you will understand that later when I do the lecture on why bad things happen to good people. So you'll have to hold on until then. Anybody else? Yeah. But you'll... This is about today's lecture? Gods and demigods? Yeah.
I agree, accept all that you have said. Only one thing intrigues me is that in Hindu culture we are told that for anything we should first remember Ganesha, and we always say Sri Ganesha Namah first, and Sri Krishnarpanam Mastu at the end. And is there any significance of this?
Actually, Ganesh is one of the demigods who acquires a very unique position in the Hindu pantheon. And this is because he is a god of auspiciousness. As you might have seen on the video show, the verse that talks about Ganesh mentions that Ganesh derives his potency from the Lord whom he carries on his tusks. But even Ganesh occupies a wonderful position because Ganesh is actually the scribe who has written the Bhagavad Gita. If you know something about Mahabharata, you will know that when Ved Vyas was asked to recite the Mahabharata, he wanted a scribe who would write it down. And the scribe who was selected to write down the Mahabharata, who was selected to write down the Bhagavad Gita, was none other than Ganesh himself. So although Ganesh is a demigod, he occupies a unique position because as a perfected individual, as a perfected demigod, he is a great devotee of Lord Krishna. And he is the person through whose pen has come the Bhagavad Gita. Look, don't get me wrong. I am not telling you that you should disrespect the demigods. I never said anything like that. It is mentioned Deva Dvijya Guru Prajna, that you should worship the demigods, you should worship your elders, you should also worship your spiritual superiors. This is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. That yes, you must offer respects to the demigods. I am not saying that you should not offer respects to them. What to speak of demigods? I am willing to offer respects to an ant. Don't disrespect anybody. But you should understand their relative position. That Krishna is a supreme and they occupy unique different positions in the pantheon. That everybody has got their own specific purpose. That if you are serious about spiritual life, if you want to get out of the cycle of birth and death, then you have to worship Lord Krishna. For those who want to continue in the material world, they have to worship the demigods. Because Ganesh is a symbol of auspiciousness. Therefore, by worshipping Ganesh, we bring on auspiciousness. But what does a devotee of God have to do with auspiciousness? For the devotee of God, he sees everything as perfect. There is nothing inauspicious, there is nothing auspicious. It is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, na rishyati na dveshati, na sochati na kankshati, shubha ashubha parityagi, yomad bhakta samaya priya. He says the devotee of God, he doesn't rejoice, neither does he cry. He doesn't hanker, neither does he lament. For him, nothing is auspicious, nothing for him is inauspicious. So where does Ganesh come in? Ganesh comes in to those who are bound by duality, who have auspiciousness, inauspiciousness, happiness and sorrow, good and bad, heat and cold, honor and dishonor. Those who are interested in the material world, they require auspiciousness. But one who is a devotee of God, he sees everything as perfect. Om Purnam Ada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Shishyate. That God is perfect and complete, His world is perfect and complete, therefore everything is auspicious. There is nothing that is inauspicious. But those who see inauspiciousness, they invoke Ganesh to bring upon auspiciousness. But the idea of Bhagavad Gita is that you are supposed to transcend the dualities of material nature. You are supposed to reach a spiritual platform where there is no duality, where everything is perfect and complete, and where you see perfection all around you because you see God all around you. Does it answer your question? So now we'll have a break for Prasadam. Thank you so much. Tomorrow's lecture will be on who am I. Now we've got a small introduction about does God exist and importance of scripture, and today we've done who is God. Now tomorrow we are going to do who am I. You better know who you are. It's okay to know God, but unless you know who you are, you won't know what your relationship with God is. So tomorrow's lecture is very, very important. In fact, I say that tomorrow, the day after that and the day after that form the sandwich for the next 3 days, and then you have the last slice of bread. So the next 3 days are very important. Don't miss them no matter what happens. And if any of your friends have missed the first 2 days, doesn't matter, you bring them along for the next 3 days. Thank you.